Brett Parker was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease 15 years ago when he was 38 years old. He is the executive director of the New York City Bar Association, and previously he was a corporate attorney and also worked for several law firms after clerking for a judge. His wife, Catherine, is a federal magistrate judge, and they have two sons, Matt and Ben, who are in their 20s. Brett is also the co-chair of the Patient Council of the Michael J. Fox Foundation for Parkinson's Research, and he's a leading voice in raising awareness, providing education, and raising money for research into Parkinson's cures and better treatments. In 2018, he managed the extraordinary feat of completing what is known as the World Marathon Challenge, or the 777, which requires running 7 marathons on 7 continents in 7 days. We will talk about that and more today. Brett, welcome to PDWise.
Thanks for having me, Alan. It's good to be here.
Glad to have you. Glad to have you, my friend. So let's go back to 2012. You wrote a piece that year that was published in Forbes, and it was titled "The Last Workplace Secret." Talk about that piece. What was it about? Why did you decide to write it, and what kind of response did you get?
So at the time, I had been diagnosed with Parkinson's for about 5 years and hadn't really told most people, certainly not my work colleagues. And the symptoms, which had been very, very, very mild at first, were starting to get more noticeable. I got a couple of comments, and I realized that it was time for me to share this news with people, A, so that they didn't think something worse was happening, and B, so I could sort of control this process myself and take some ownership of it. And I had started to tell people one at a time that I had Parkinson's, and every one of those conversations was exhausting. It was exhausting for me, it was exhausting for my friends and family, who I started to tell one at a time. And so I decided to be a little selfish, and to me, it was easier to tell everybody at once than to tell each person one at a time. So I wrote the blog for Forbes and talked about, and I'll talk about what I said in it. And then I sent it basically to everybody, my work colleagues, my friends, my family who didn't know. And in it, I explained, the process of keeping this secret, how hard it had been, and how I felt like I was really losing an opportunity to share my journey with others, to educate people, to raise awareness, and that I had no choice at this point but to share the news with everybody.
Yeah, a lot of people talk about this as being one of the most significant, at least initial challenges with Parkinson's. And take us back to your, time after diagnosis, and you waited for a good, period of time before you went sort of really public, and you went public in a big way. What was that like for you? I mean, what sort of were the things you considered, and what were you worried about? What informed all of that?
Yeah, I mean, it was, as I said, at first, I didn't really think, after diagnosis, I didn't think too much about it because the symptoms were so minor. I mean, even my wife didn't really notice it. It was just a slight tremor in my hand. But again, as the symptoms started coming out, I actually felt, I felt worse keeping it private, keeping it secret. In fact, keeping it secret and feeling like I had to hide something that was really important created more stress, which actually at times made the symptoms worse. Stress makes Parkinson's much worse for a lot of people, brings on the symptoms. And so it became this vicious cycle of I'm trying to hide my symptoms, and then I'm anxious about hiding my symptoms, which makes the symptoms worse, which means I have to hide it even more. And I just decided that it was time to share that with people. And the thinking was sort of like ripping off a bandage, rather than doing it one at a time, having these conversations where I would cry, my friends would cry. And I did it about 20 times, and I said, that's not going to work for me. And I felt like, I took the ownership of the disease and control over the news by sharing it the way I wanted to, how I wanted to, and try to make it into something productive as opposed to something negative.
Yeah, I appreciate that very much. And as you know, we're friends, and I reached out to you not long after my own diagnosis, after I read your article in Forbes. And a lot of people, who get young onset Parkinson's in particular, who are working, maybe raising kids still in the home, really are worried about the professional implications. And I wonder what that was like for you, and sort of what's happened since, you've become public, and you're not only public, but you're, very outspoken and really an advocate for Parkinson's and in all kinds of arenas. But what's that been like for you?
So when I was diagnosed, I was at an earlier job, and I very consciously did not want to tell people at work about it. I didn't want people making decisions about my career, promotions, responsibilities. I didn't want any decisions being made about me based on that information. And so I through that job, I didn't tell anyone. And then I switched jobs to a different company, and it was at that company that I decided it was time to tell people. And you worry about telling people. At the same time, you worry about not telling people. I mean, for some people, Parkinson's really can interfere with job performance. Right. And for me, I wanted people, if to the extent they noticed anything, to know that it wasn't that I was, drinking at work. I wasn't doing drugs. People assume a lot of wrong things when they see the symptoms, and I didn't want to get in trouble at work for something that's actually health related. And so the reaction was incredible. I mean, in fact, everyone in my office was very supportive. I did a Team Fox running event that year, my first one, to raise money. And the CEO of the company called me up, and I'll never forget this. He said, that was very brave of you to do that. We're behind you 100%. And then the company wrote a check for my first Team Fox event. And I had a couple of people who reacted oddly. One person said to me, "So Bret, you've got this disease. Like, what am I supposed to do with that?"
Wow.
And so, so some people had a very odd reaction, and I get it. It's uncomfortable. What I would just try to do in every one of those conversations is make them feel comfortable by assuring them that I had assured myself this was not the end of the world, that I still had a long road to go. Now, the truth is, when I was early diagnosed, I didn't know what the road was going to look like. For all I knew, I wouldn't be walking or driving or anything.
Right.
But I have 5 years of feeling good, even while the symptoms were progressing. I felt like it was time to tell people.
Yeah. Yeah, I really appreciate that. So it's a nice segue to my next question for you. What's it like to live with Parkinson's? A lot of folks who read PDYs have Parkinson's or are close to Parkinson's, but some don't know very much about it from a personal standpoint. So, what's it like to have Parkinson's?
So, I mean, the thing about Parkinson's for me, and everybody's different. I mean, if you know 1,000 people with Parkinson's, 1,000 different kinds of Parkinson's. So for me, there's sometimes when things are totally normal. I'm on, meaning my medicine is working. I literally don't feel any symptoms at all. I don't feel any rigidity, stiffness. Sorry about the cat behind me, but that's the Zoom world.
All good.
So, I feel fine at times. And other times I feel really like things are tough. I feel very rigid and stiff. If I'm walking, it made me look like I have a limp.
Right.
I have cognitive issues with memory. Sometimes I don't sleep very well. I have a tremor, again, when I'm really stressed. And then it runs the spectrum from really bad to really fine. And so for me, living with Parkinson's, it's very unpredictable. That's one of the hardest things about it is I'm still working full time. I'm still sort of raising my kids who are in their 20s, so they feel like they don't have to be raised anymore, but I'm still trying to raise them a little bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, it feels at times really fine, other times not so fine.
Yeah, I hear you. What surprised you about living with Parkinson's? I mean, you mentioned not knowing sort of what the road ahead might look like. Obviously, that's true for all of us, and we often imagine things that some of which come true, and many of which, in my experience, don't come true or haven't come true yet. But what has surprised you about living with this disease?
Well, a lot has surprised me. First of all, when I was diagnosed, I didn't know anything about it. I'm 38 years old. Parkinson's, you think of that as an old person disease. And so I'll never forget when the first neurologist said to me after like a 7-minute evaluation, you've got Parkinson's. I didn't even understand what that meant. I literally said to him, I said, am I going to die from this? I literally didn't know what it was other than sort of what I'd seen on TV and things like that. So what surprised me was actually that it progressed for me very slowly. Or has progressed so far relatively slowly. That was surprising. It was surprising to me that the symptoms could affect me in so many different ways. I have almost no sense of smell, which as we know now is, could be one of the earlier symptoms, but it's one of the sort of strange ones, but it's so clearly a symptom. Speaking of the cat, I'm now officially in charge of cat litter changing because I'm the one who's impervious to the smell. So there's some upside to these symptoms.
Yeah. Yeah. The sense of smell, I mean, as you say, for a lot of people, oftentimes looking back is one that, a symptom that occurred maybe even 5 years before diagnosis, right? That it's so subtle at first, and many people don't really think a lot about it. But then looking back, it's like, oh yeah, I noticed that X number of years ago, I stopped being able to smell things as well as I used to.
Yeah, my handwriting too, in retrospect, my handwriting got worse and worse, and I didn't think anything of it at the time. But in retrospect, it was clearly tied to this. In fact, now I basically don't bother trying to take handwritten notes because I can't even read my own handwriting. So I'll type things. And so to your question earlier about what's it like living with it, I mean, you learn to navigate around it. I take notes on my phone, not with a pen and paper. Sleep, I sleep when I can, and when I can't sleep, I don't try to fight it because it's sort of wasting energy.
Yeah.
You figure out how to navigate the symptoms and make the best of things when you feel good, and give yourself a break when you don't feel as good. I'm a big napper, especially on the weekends when I'm sort of recovering from the week of work. So and I try to sort of go easy on myself when I can and give myself a break. And if I want to take a nap on a Saturday afternoon, I take a nap.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all really good wisdom. We know the importance of exercise for managing, PD symptoms. You are an avid exercise person yourself, and we're going to talk more about that later on with the marathon challenge. But other than exercise, what have you found to be helpful for living well with Parkinson's? I mean, you mentioned sort of going easy on yourself and finding respite and all of that. But any other things that you would recommend for folks to consider for trying to live well with this disease?
The thing about this concept of sort of taking it easy on yourself, it's a really fine line, because I'm aware that it's not a good thing to sort of fall back and not be engaged, not be active, frankly, to give yourself too much of a break. And so it's a fine line between pushing yourself to stay active, make sure you're socializing, make sure you're getting out, make sure you're, even when your symptoms are bothering you or me, whoever, to sort of go past that and resist the urge to sort of withdraw. And I think I sense this as my symptoms get sort of more pronounced. There's a natural inclination to say, I have a real tremor right now. I really don't want to go out to dinner and people see me shaking and see me stiff. And I think that becomes a vicious cycle too, that's important to avoid, for me at least. It's important for me to stay as active as I can, mentally, physically, socially, emotionally, stay connected to people. I mean, they say that in addition to exercise, having social connections is very helpful. And
Right.
So my intent is to sort of stay as active as I can, as long as I can.
Yeah. Yeah, on the isolation piece, let's linger there for a minute. I think a lot of folks wrestle with that. And oftentimes, in my experience, personally and with friends, it relates to this kind of, feeling self-conscious, right? Or not wanting to have to explain why you're moving, in an unusual way, or you're stiff, or, whatever the symptoms are, you have tremor. Michael J. Fox, whom we both revere and appreciate in all the work he's done, has said that for him, he had to throw vanity out the window. And that's something that I've come back to a number of times myself. And I wonder what you think about that, this kind of commitment to just sort of saying, this is what I'm dealing with and I'm going to live my life. It sounds like you've found that to be helpful for you.
Yeah, I mean, for me, being sort of genuine and true to myself, has always been a helpful tool. And it's also just sort of, I'm wired that way. It's just the way I feel comfortable operating in life. And so, yeah, I think letting people see the good and the bad and the ugly, and not feeling like I have to hide it. I mean, one of the things that, Michael J. Fox really gets credit for is he didn't just live, with Parkinson's publicly. And he's not just still working or sort of working, but he's in a role that's a very visible role. I mean,
Yeah.
there's really no hiding it when you're a public figure like that. And I respect that. And I think to myself, if he can show up on TV and in movies, with symptoms, I can certainly show up among a bunch of lawyers or a bunch of my friends with symptoms. I'm not seen on TV in front of millions of people. I'm just seen in front of a few people. And so So he's a real role model for that. And I think, trying to not worry about what people think. And, inevitably someone will see a symptom and you just sort of sense that they're not sure how to deal with it. And they'll get that question like, so how are you?
Yeah.
I know what that means.
Yeah.
I'll just sort of broach the topic right away. Say, well, I'm like, well, the Parkinson's feels really good today. I still have it, but
Right.
um,
Right.
but I think a little humor and a little self-deprecation and a little openness makes them feel a little more comfortable.
Yeah, I think that's important. Putting yourself at ease, but also maybe trying to put others at ease too. I have found can be quite helpful. And Michael J. Fox is a master at all of that. So, as are you. So let's move back to the kind of workplace issues for a moment. You're an attorney. You lead an influential organization, the New York City Bar Association. What would you say to those who have, received a Parkinson's diagnosis and they're still working, with regard to what they should be thinking about as they go forward, particularly from a legal standpoint? I know you're not here to give, particular legal advice, but, what should they be thinking about from a legal perspective in the workplace in particular? What would you want folks to know?
So thanks for helping me with the disclaimer, which of course I have to give, which is this is not legal advice and no one should take it as legal advice. If you have a legal question, consult a lawyer. That being said, what's interesting is, employers for the most part are generally required to accommodate your disabilities. And so, and it's only if you ask for an accommodation. So if you have Parkinson's or some other condition and you keep it secret and they don't know that you have it and your symptoms interfere with you doing your job and you don't say it's because of a condition, they don't know what it is. All they know is that you're not performing your job the way they expect, and they may, you may face some issues at work. So it's a question in your own mind of when do you tell your employer, your boss, or your employer more generally, so that if you're having problems at work, you can ask for that accommodation. You can say, you know what, I really need to come to work an hour later because my sleep patterns are what they are. And so, in fact, telling your employer sort of puts a line in the timeline that says, okay, from that moment on, they know you have a medical condition, they know you have a disability, and maybe you've asked for an accommodation. And so it makes it hard for them if they were going to do something negative about you, fire you, change your assignment. I mean, I get a lot of people who come to me with these questions, and it's a fine line. I mean, if your symptoms are modest and you're a private person and you're doing your job fine, maybe you don't want to tell your boss because you don't want them making decisions about your responsibilities. If it's interfering, or maybe you have a good relationship with the boss and you feel like they're going to be understanding, that can be a really good conversation to have, because it'll help you figure out what kind of accommodations you need or don't need. But look, I've heard situations. I had someone who reached out to me relatively recently, said that they're at a job, and when they told their boss that they had Parkinson's, the boss said, all right, well, that's great. We're not going to fire you, of course, but we're going to move all of your accounts because we don't want you to have to work so hard or
Right.
stuff. And so that's not appropriate. That's not, the answer to someone with a disability isn't to take their work away and keep them employed. It's to provide reasonable accommodations, and still, the job has to get done. Your clients or customers all have to have their needs met, but you can still do your job while you have this condition. And in fact, one of the things that I've noticed is that with all this remote working and Zoom technology, I think there's more opportunities for people with Parkinson's and other disabilities to tell their boss, look, I worked from home for a year, so don't tell me that I can't work from home 2 days a week.
Yeah, that's such a great point. And I think the world is going to look different in a lot of ways, but I think to your point, the way we work is certainly going to be, one of those differences. We've mentioned the Michael J. Fox Foundation. Talk about your work with the foundation and, particularly your leadership role with the patient council and the work that you're doing there.
So obviously I'm biased because I'm co-chair of the patient council. You're biased because you've done some excellent blogs and some work for them, which is great. So I started off when I got diagnosed just using the foundation as a source of information. I went to the website, I did some reading, didn't talk to anybody there about it. It was just sort of quietly learning about the disease, and the website was really helpful for that. I mean, I was very hesitant at first to go to any event that had a whole bunch of people with Parkinson's. I was not comfortable going in a room with a bunch of old people, a bunch of people who had trouble walking, had trouble talking, had trouble moving. I just wasn't ready personally to face that future. But I then got more comfortable and realized, like, look, we're in a community, we're in this together, and being silent is not going to help. So I started going to some events. And then when I outed myself with the Forbes column, that's when I said it was time to really be more vocal. And I did a Team Fox event, which is their platform for people to do running, biking, all sorts of sports events, bake sales, whatever it could take to raise awareness and raise money. So I started doing one Team Fox event a year. And that was it. For me, Parkinson's is really important for me, and it's important for me to be active in it, but it's not all I am. So I don't want to do Parkinson's 24/7, even though I have it 24/7. So I do a Team Fox event once a year. I started getting involved, and then became co-chair of joined the patient council and was on it for a while, and then became the co-chair. And it's just a great experience. I mean, in fact, I feel like I get more out of it than I give into it. I get to meet patients from all over, all different backgrounds, all different ages, all different types of symptoms. And it's great to have a place where we can talk together and then be a resource for the foundation, for the medical community, to help advocate for the kind of research that we need, the funding that we need, awareness for the issues that we face, advocacy before government and other regulatory bodies. And it's a great way for me, at least personally, to give back and to do something for this condition, because I'm not a doctor, I'm not a researcher, I'm not going to find the cure, but I could certainly provide some awareness. I can certainly raise some money and help others find the cure.
Yeah. Yeah. So what does the landscape look like going forward? From the research side, just from the sort of living well with Parkinson's side, what do you see on the landscape?
I mean, the research is progressing, rapidly, but so is the incidence of Parkinson's. I mean, I think it is the fastest growing neurological condition in the United States, if not the world. So, but I'm hopeful. I mean, of all the medicines I take, 2 of them are medicines that did not exist 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And so the fact that some of the treatments that I'm having right now are recent ones show the progress that's being made. On the other hand, the number one treatment for Parkinson's is a medication that's been around for over 40 or 50 years, and they call that the gold standard. And there's still no cure to stop the progression of the disease. Right. So, my medication is all about symptom management, and what we really need is something that will stop, reverse, and eventually eliminate the disease. And so it's a tricky, complicated disease. The sort of variety of symptoms is a sign of how complicated it is. So there's a lot of work to be done, which is why I still do all the Team Fox fundraising and the Michael J. Fox Foundation patient council engagement, because there is still a lot of work, but the pipeline is big. It's getting bigger. And, we've seen how sort of strategic investments in certain research can help advance them to final drug products.
Yeah. Yeah, it's exciting. I mean, I often say to folks, humorously, but also in a really honest way, there's never been a better time to have Parkinson's. And, it's true for all the reasons that you're saying. So let's talk about the World Marathon Challenge. Not many people can say they've run a marathon. Hardly anyone can say they've run 7 marathons in 7 days on 7 different continents. So tell us about that experience.
I mean, clearly the stupidest thing I ever did. I mean, even though I've run marathons, and I would say a repeat exerciser. So I'll run a marathon. I've run a marathon, and then I won't exercise for literally a couple of years, and then I'll run another marathon, and I'd run them slowly. But I was looking for something significant to do to raise money for research, and also for some life challenges for me. I like picking a challenge for myself and then trying to attain it. And, in fact, this is Bo, by the way. Sorry about Bo. So in fact, so I've done a couple of things that were sort of a little edgy or crazy. I did a skydive. I've done a whole bunch of things. But I was looking for something big, and my friend David and I looked at this World Marathon Challenge, and I said to myself, well, we've done single marathons. Why can't we do 7? Like, why not? And I did one more marathon just to make sure I could, because it had been a while since I'd done one. And I finished it. And I said, let's try this. And so, yeah, it's 7 marathons, 7 continents, 7 days. It's it's not easy for anyone, whether you have Parkinson's or not. The thought of doing it with Parkinson's, I think it took a little while for me to convince my family and my doctor that this was an okay thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, but what an experience, right? And I know, I and thousands of people followed you and your sort of experience with this, and we were all rooting for you. And I think, most of us are not going to be able to do anything that approximates that, physically, but people who do that, at least for me, give me inspiration and really sort of an impetus for thinking about what I can do to raise awareness, to raise funds to educate people. And so I think, on behalf of those who sort of have lived vicariously through you and that experience, thank you for that. And I think its effects continue to ripple out into the community pretty in pretty amazing ways.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say that, I think it's important to point out that, I did these marathons really slowly. So, I mean, some of them were like slower than walking pace. I mean, I did a 9-hour and 15-minute marathon, which is slower than like a normal, like comfortable walk. And, I don't like people to think that I'm trying to say that, come on, you got Parkinson's, get over it and go run a marathon.
Yeah.
I've got this motto is, do epic stuff. And for me, that means doing whatever is epic for you. And for some people, just getting up and walking 15 minutes is pretty epic if you're a certain stage of the disease. For me, this was a real challenge. And it was important for me to prove that I could do it, that I could raise awareness, I could raise a lot of money, and also to retain some control over this disease. And I did not, as I said, did not run these marathons fast, and it was not pretty at all. But it was really amazing to have so many people following me and cheering me. And the first 6 marathons, there were no crowds. There's nobody there. Yeah. And the last marathon in Miami, as you know, a lot of people came and visited. It was very heartwarming and supportive. Yeah. I think, but for that, I would have had a tough time finishing the last marathon. So
there were more crowds in Miami than in Antarctica.
Yeah, the crowds were a little thin there on the ice.
So, Bret, one last question for you. If you could go back in time 15 years and say something to your newly diagnosed self, to others who are facing that diagnosis now or will soon, what would it be?
I probably I would tell myself to learn more quickly, to sort of take advantage of everything, enjoy every day. Don't leave anything on the table, because you don't know when something's going to happen, when your symptoms are going to get really tough. I spent the first few years, I won't say in state of denial, but certainly in state of ignoring my illness. And that was fine until the symptoms kicked up. So if I could do it all over again, I probably would have told myself to take this attitude I have of do epic stuff, of, enjoy life. Don't take friends, family, experiences for granted. And I probably would have tried a little harder earlier on to take on this attitude. In some ways, I still feel like Parkinson's so far has given me more than it's taken, because, but for this disease, I wouldn't have bothered trying to do 7 marathons and 7 continents in 7 days. I mean, it's not something that I would have even gotten off the couch to tackle. And so, the kick in the butt of this disease has made me do some things that were a little uncomfortable, that I wouldn't have tried to do otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. Well, keep doing it. You really inspire so many people, myself, chief among them. And I really am grateful on behalf of the community for the contributions you're making and really showing us how to live well for a long time with a disease that isn't always so friendly. And you do it with grace and with courage. And on behalf of the PDY's community, I want to just say thank you. And thank you for being with us today.
Well, Alan, I got to say, thanks to you, because, one of the silver linings of this is meeting, really incredible people like yourself. I mean, but for Parkinson's, I wouldn't have you as a friend. And I consider you a dear friend, and you are an incredible ally and advocate in this community. Thank you for PDYs. I love reading it. I'm sorry that now this is going to be a video, because the quality level is going to drop down, but I'm sure the next one you'll raise it back up. But truly, thank you for everything that you do.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And thank you again for being with us today.
Stay safe and healthy.